right, I am back with This Week at Tassi, the weekly news roundup. Sorry I missed last week. I don't remember what happened, but I couldn't record it. This week, there is a lot of news, so I definitely can't miss that. Really, really interesting stories, I think, this week. A lot of movement in different regards here. The biggest story of the week, I would say, was the insane development that as a result of the TikTok ban, which was directed toward parent company ByteDance, Marvel Snap went offline for an extended period of time, and it's still kind of being messed around with to this day. The reason being is that ByteDance owns the publisher of Marvel Rivals, and like pretty much any app that ByteDance owned went offline during this TikTok ban. That was a couple like video editing apps and other stuff, but apparently it was also Marvel Rivals, and then there are a couple other games that happen to as well. The craziest part of this is not just that happened, but Second Dinner, the developer of that based in the US, was not told at all this was happening, and it caught them totally by surprise. Players logged in, there was just a message saying that it didn't work. I don't think it had the like President Trump will help us part of the message that TikTok did. But needless to say, developers were not amused. Ben Brode actually posted that people should use a VPN to say they were in Canada to get around this. As we know, the TikTok ban was, well, not reversed. Like TikTok took itself offline as sort of like a statement about this. They did it preemptively, but then they were like, oh, well, we've heard Trump's going to, save us, so we're going to turn it back on. TikTok went back on pretty quickly. Marvel Snap took longer. There was stuff wrong with the store. And I believe, like TikTok, you still can't download the game from the Apple or Google app stores. The reason being is this is the same thing with TikTok, where the law is that Apple and Google cannot distribute these apps, which is illegal, and they can be fined $5,000 per user, I just heard. So they are not issuing, or they are not making those available. And apparently that does include Marvel Snap. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you can download it. However, if you already have it on your phone, you can keep using it. The problem here is going to come up when the game has to be updated, which obviously is going to be the case for new additions and stuff like that, new fixes, because that has to go through the app stores. And if they don't allow that, well, you're screwed. What Second Dinner has said is they are going to say this will never happen again, and they are actively trying to find a new publisher. So they are not going to be connected to ByteDance in any fashion. This whole thing was weird because looking into this, there's these stories from a couple years ago that ByteDance was trying to divest its entire gaming arm and get out of gaming, the arm being Newverse, which is the publisher of Snap. That apparently did not fully happen, so they were still classified as ByteDance games. So here we are. The best case scenario for Marvel Snap is to like get the hell out of here and find a new publisher that is not connected to any of these guys and would not be affected by some sort of future TikTok ban, which like the law is still in place that TikTok can't exist. I think it was just upheld by the Supreme Court a little bit ago, and Trump did a delay for it, but it still should actually be shut down at this point, and there's no indication the app stores are going to put it back. It's a mess, but hopefully Marvel Snap can extract itself from all this. And very, very weird development and a gaming angle I was not expecting to cover here. Something I made a video about this week as a different story is PlayStation axing even more live service games. This brings the total up to, I don't know, a lot, at least half a dozen over the past couple of years here, in the midst of this big live service push, where at one point they were trying to get like a dozen live service games out in 2 years. That has fallen precipitously, and so far they've only had one really big hit that's been like a new release, which is obviously Helldivers. They've also had one of the worst releases in gaming history, which is Concord. And I think they're really not taking any chances with some of these other games. So what got canceled was a live service God of War game from Bluepoint, and then some game that Days Gone studio Bend was working on. We don't know exactly what that was. Live service God of War game sounds like a bad idea to me, even if it's not taking Sony Santa Monica's time. we had multiplayer God of War Ascension like a million years ago, but cannot imagine that a live God of War game would have gone over terribly well with fans of the series. I don't know. Maybe it could have been awesome or something, but if that got canceled, clearly it was maybe not, the most promising thing. I don't think this is wholly based on Concord failing because we've had cancellations before that even happened. The most high profile of which was The Last of Us Factions, The Last of Us Online, whatever. And that was years spent by Naughty Dog trying to make that game, and that got canceled. I forget all the other ones that have been canceled, but there have been a few. There was supposed to be some sort of big multiplayer component of Spider-Man 2 called The Great Web, which was canceled and only found when people were going through the leaked, hacked files of that. So we are down to not a ton of live games that we know about left. 2 of those are from Bungie, and I believe they'll be multi-platform, so it's not quite the same thing. There'll be Marathon, obviously, and then it's this new Gummy Bears game they're working on that's supposed to be like Smash Brothers mixed with a MOBA. Another game is Fair Games, this heist game that has essentially disappeared from all conversation after a trailer a year and a half ago from Jade Raymond's Haven Studios. Don't have much faith that's going to survive all this. So Sony's live service push is not doing well at all outside of Helldivers. I'm sure they really, really want Marathon to be a hit. That is allegedly going to be out by the end of this year. I would be surprised if it hits that mark. I've heard internally they would be surprised if it hits that mark, but Sony really, really wants that. So not great in terms of that. But Sony obviously does have some pretty high profile games coming up, Ghost of Yotai, stuff like that. And we can pivot to the Xbox showcase where, that is some positive news with Xbox this week. I am often down on Xbox, but that was a very good showcase. They announced Ninja Gaiden 4. They stealth dropped Ninja Gaiden 2. They showed off Doom and South of Midnight, which looked really good. It was a very, very positive showcase with a lot of good vibes coming out of it. No like, oh, Xbox has no games kind of stuff. Like, this is a significant amount of stuff. It looks like they're going to offer. A lot of this is coming to PS5, whether it's a date or later. Like, this is part of Xbox moving to more or less become a third-party publisher that also makes hardware and has Game Pass. We're going to see this all the time now, so it's not even a surprise at this point. One game that we do not think is coming to PS5 anytime soon, just kind of linked to this, is Avowed. Avowed's in a very weird situation where it's out in like 3 weeks. And people are like, Avowed is out in 3 weeks? Yeah, it is. There was this stupid rumor that it was delayed. It's not delayed, but certainly there's not been a ton of buzz around it. Marketing is like kind of just spooling up. I was like complaining that there wasn't any marketing, and like that day they started some campaign for it with like new videos and things. I don't know. It seems poised to like be a game that I would call it the second biggest exclusive Xbox game of the year, the other being Fable, which is not confirmed as coming to PS5. Doom is probably a bigger game than Avowed, but that is coming to PS5, we know. So it's a really big game, and I and other people played the preview and were really positive about it. I was pretty skeptical about Avowed. I didn't think it looked that great in the previews, but I really enjoyed playing it. No idea if that will extend to the whole game, but it had really positive previews, and I'm wondering if this is going to be like a good game that sort of gets lost in the Xbox shuffle, kind of like a little bit what happened to Indiana Jones, but I guess we'll see. Moving on to Dragon Age. I almost said Dragon Age Inquisition, which is what I put in a headline of my article because I'm an idiot. Dragon Age The Veilguard. We got a EA like pre-earnings report kind of thing that cited the fact that 1.5 million players engaged with Dragon Age The Veilguard. That was about half what they wanted to see. Engaged with is not sales. Engaged with can be people playing, quote unquote, for free through EA Play or something like that. So did this game sell 1 million copies? Maybe. It might have, but this is very much a disappointment for EA and BioWare if it performed half as well as what they wanted. That may be somewhat of an unreasonable expectation to, get 3 million, quote, engagements over that short a period of time. But it's, there's no real way to spin Veilguard's performance. Like, yes, I am someone who liked the game. I gave it an 8.5. Generally, it was pretty well liked. It has like an 82 Metacritic. Yes, it has hugely bombed, meta critic user scores. But if you go on, Steam for people who have actually played it, it's still like 70% positive. But it did not do well. Like, there's no real way around that. I think that's a combination of a number of factors. It being a direct sequel to a game that came out 10 years ago. So a lot of people may not be familiar with the series, familiar with the story. Like, it stars, the main villain is this guy who was hugely important to Inquisition that you may know essentially nothing about. For existing players, it really changed the aesthetic. It changed the whole vibe of the game. I didn't end up hating the aesthetic, but it was a little too happy-go-lucky for me. It was, not maybe as mature enough as I hoped it would be, and that's sometimes reflected in the dialogue with like overly modern parlance, and it just, that whole part of it kind of came off as weird to me. And then I don't think, the culture war thing, I don't know if that was like directly impacting sales, as I'm not sure how many of those people would even have bought the game anyway. And like Dragon Age has always had like same-sex relationships and whatever. But that did consume like a ton of online conversation and oxygen around the game, which is not helpful, certainly, though, this is one of a few reasons that it may have underperformed, and certainly not the main one or the only one. And then finally, I don't think it was great that Baldur's Gate 3 came out not that long ago and won Game of the Year and is one of the best RPGs of all time. And it was easy to be like directly comparing Dragon Age, even if it's not fair, even if it's not, a TTRPG. It doesn't compare favorably. I mean, Baldur's Gate is superior. Essentially, I think everyone would admit in every way. I personally have said I don't like TTRPGs and I like more action-oriented stuff like Dragon Age. I recognize that Baldur's Gate is a better game, certainly. And I don't think that helped. So now we turn to how is this going to affect BioWare? They have a Mass Effect game coming, which is supposedly, quote unquote, supposed to be like core Mass Effect, the way Mass Effect always is, but the implication there was not some big change in aesthetic or vibe or something. But this is essentially 3 misses in a row for BioWare with huge games. That would be Anthem, obviously, and then Mass Effect Andromeda had its own issues and certainly did not perform nearly as well as the original trilogy. Now we have Dragon Age, which, that game has been years and years in the making and was kind of rebooted a bunch of times, and it's a sequel some people have been waiting 10 years for, and it's underperforming. Even if some measure of players do like it, it's just not performing as well as it needs to, and it costs, no doubt, a ton of money to make, so that is bad. And then finally we get to the story that I really like that I just published, where there's this theory that NetEase may be publishing or planting fake character leaks inside Marvel Rivals in order to throw off leakers and people like me who want to know what future characters are. This has been some measure of debate among the leaking community. One person said this is happening and like listed a bunch of fake heroes that they think are fake. Other leakers are like, this is all like elaborately in the data with like full move sets, tables, like all of the stuff. It is in the data, so it would be a very elaborate fake if they were doing it. I am leaning toward it being a fake. There's a number of reasons for this. The quote unquote batch of fake heroes here is a list that almost all of them came out after a list of heroes that are being declared as real. You can imagine what might have happened is NetEase saw that list of real heroes and were like, well, that sucks. And then they started putting fake heroes in the game. Some of the ones in the fake list, I've always had trouble believing are real. Like, are you really, really going to put Paste Pot Pete in the game? Out of the hundreds and hundreds of higher profile Marvel characters, you're going to use half of a season to release Paste Pot Pete. There are other kind of obscure ones like Locust and things like that. But then there's also kind of higher profile X-Men that you would imagine would make their way there, like Cyclops, or Gambit, or Rogue, and people that, you do really want to see. So it would be a bummer if those were fake, but I don't know. Paste Pot Pete really raises alarm bells for me, honestly. Finally, it's just kind of unbelievable that you would leak, that 22 different characters would be leaking a couple weeks into season 1. This is, if they're doing 2 characters a season now, that is almost 3 years of planned hero releases. So the explanation here is either that some of these are fake, or almost certainly they might be, kind of concepts, but not all of them are going to make it to release, even if they're, sort of being conceptualized in early stages. It does not seem like this can just be the answer, that these are definitely the next 22 heroes that come out. I am going to be looking out for more leaks, because these leaks have come out like very quickly in pretty short order. And if another big batch of leaks come out, we're getting to like 25, 30 leak characters, like it's going to be harder and harder to believe. Not that I won't like list them to see what people think about them, but I think it's very important that we should take all this with a grain of salt. I guess I already did 5 things, but just briefly in terms of what I'm playing, I kind of stopped Path of Exile now. I got a warrior up to 81, 82. I still don't like it. It's just I finally got like a good mob clearing build, but like you have to build like an entirely separate set of skills and a build to like actually fight bosses. That class sucks. I hate it. And I'll, they're going to do a balance patch at some point here. And then maybe I'll keep going. I've been playing Marvel Rivals every day. It like, that may not be, a lot of people may doing that, be like, so what? It's a popular game. For me to play a PvP game voluntarily every day is crazy. Like I cannot remember the last time I've played a dedicated PvP game, like literally every day, just for fun. People always ask me, like, do you play games for fun or is it all work? It can sometimes be a split, but genuinely, like, I'm not, doing guides and tips and tricks for these different characters. I'm covering news around the game, but like, I don't have to be playing as much as I am, but I'm really enjoying at least doing my dailies, doing the seasonal bounties they show up, making my way through the battle pass. Crazy. I have not been this engaged with a PvP game in a very long time, and given that this is putting up 400,000 concurrent players on just Steam a night, yeah, it's doing extremely well. And we'll circle back to its overall performance later, and in a little while here they're going to add Thing and Human Torch and stuff. But my favorite characters are Penny Parker and Luna Snow and Star-Lord. I got to get the Star-Lord skin. Storm is really good right now. But I mostly really like Penny Parker. I think she's very fun. So yeah, she's my pick. Anyway, let me know what you're playing. Let me know what you think about these news items. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.